everyone, it's Thomas from CyberPower. I know we've been talking a lot about our Trinity PC. Well, the cases just came in and here it is. This is the Trinity case, and inside of it we're going to put a X99 ITX motherboard from ASRock. This is the first ever mini ITX X99. We're going to put an Intel i7-5820K processor, a NVIDIA GeForce GTX Titan X graphics card, 120mm liquid cooling, slot loading DVD player, 850 watt Corsair power supply, Corsair Air Force series fans, 16 gigabytes of Corsair DDR4 memory, Samsung A50 Evo SSD, and a 3.5 inch HDD, and all that stuff is going to fit in this triangle case, and we'll have that video for you later today. Okay guys, we got the box, I got my knife, let's open this thing up and see what's inside. Alright, so let's tip it over because I know this thing's pretty heavy. That wasn't a fart, that was a box. Okay, so it comes in these two big styrofoam blocks. It's triangular. It's cool. So you can see, it's cool. Let's get the other styrofoam off here. And comes with this foam protection. This little kind of foam felty cloth protector. Okay, so right away you can see actually two of these blades have these little rubber feet on them that kind of protect from scratching, so that's cool. Put this on a Lazy Susan so you can kind of see better. Alright, so there you go. It looks just like it does in the pictures. Alright, so let me open up the inside, open up these blades, take the covers off so you can see what's inside. Just each blade has two thumb screws that secure the plates. And you pull the plates out like this, back towards the back. These are pretty heavy. I'd say they're about 4 or 5 pounds each. Solid steel. Let's rotate it. You can see also it stands by itself. You don't need the feet. Accessories box. And another accessories box. So let me set this up. The best way to show you guys would be this way. So positioned at the top right now is what we call the performance blade. This is where the graphics card goes. It fits a full-length graphics card, so let me grab a GTX Titan X real quick. You can see it fits in there with plenty of room to spare, about 2.5 inches left. And it has its own dedicated fan there, so that'll really help with the cooling of the graphics card. Now also you'll notice in here is a female PCI Express connector. So that connects actually with the rest of the system through this PCI Express ribbon cable that routes through the spine and into this other bay, the other blade I should say. And you can see that the male end of it is right here. And this would line up with where the PCI Express slot of a mini ITX motherboard would be. So you simply install the card and the motherboard, and then you just plug that right in to the motherboard and you're hooked up. So real quick, this blade here is obviously for the motherboard and the processor. It's got room for a mini ITX motherboard, and then in front of that is space for a 120mm liquid cooling radiator and a fan. So that helps keep the heat from the motherboard, the processor, the memory, the VRM chips, and all that stuff in that section of the case, so it doesn't have any effect on the graphics card temperature or anything like that, so that's always a good thing. Quickly moving back up to the top, you'll see also in this blade there are 3 pre-wired 2.5-inch bays for hard drives or SSDs. So they're kind of in like a hot swappable configuration. You just put them in these trays and you slide it back in and it hooks up, and those cables are routed. Also the data cables, at least the SATA connectors, are routed down here into this the motherboard blade as well, and that'll really help when we're building it. It'll help us not having to route those cables, so that's cool. And then finally, let's move over to the other blade that we haven't talked about yet, which is where the power supply goes. The power supply mounts here in the back. It supports full-length ATX power supplies and even longer ones too. Some of the modular ones are longer, so that's a good feature. And then also in this blade are 2 3.5-inch hard drive bays, so for standard spinning drives. And then in the middle here is a space to mount a slot load optical drive, but you don't need to have one with this case. In fact, it comes with a faceplate here that doesn't even have a slot, so you can change that out as you want. And you'll also notice in this bay that there are some power connectors here, and those are for those previously mentioned 2.5-inch hot swap bays up by the graphics card. So it's really helpful that they've done a lot of work here already, that you can, instead of having to go through and cable manage everything once you put the parts in, it's all kind of there already for you. So that'll really help later on. And so I guess now we're ready to sort of put more stuff in this system, and it's going to be pretty interesting. So we'll have that for you soon. Alright guys, so instead of boring you guys with about a 35-minute build here, we went ahead and put it all together. I'm just going to show you some of the key parts, explain some things that were a little bit difficult, and just basically show you the completed system, like without the sides on it. So here it is. As you can see in the motherboard, well actually let's start in the process. We started in the performance blade here with the graphics card. You can see it's the GTX Titan X is installed here. It can actually fit a GTX Titan Z. It has 3 expansion bays, and it's plenty long enough, so that'd be cool to put one of those in there. But anyway, the card is very secure. It obviously has a PCI Express mount. It's rigid down there, so that's securing it. And then the 2 screws in the back, and the power cables themselves actually provide a fair amount of support on the back to prevent from any torsion that might screw up the slot at the bottom. We also have the SSD installed here in the top, and it's actually really a pretty secure connection. Sometimes with these hot swap bays, it's kind of like a flimsy little slide in and out. You can lose connection. I'm very satisfied with how this one locks in. These ones, it's really easy to install. You just screw the SSD into the tray and then push it down, and it kind of gives you a nice satisfying click in. I'll show you also the power supply bay. So this is pretty tight. It's a little bit difficult to work with this one. We definitely recommend fully modular power supplies for helping with threading the 24 pin or the 20+4 pin ATX power connector for the motherboard and the EPS 12 volt power connector, because those can be a little bit unwieldy to get through the spine. But once that's through, that's really all you have to do besides the PCI Express, which is much easier because it's smaller. But then once that's all through, it's really easy to build out. So power supply is installed, and then let's go over here to the motherboard. So the motherboard was really easy to put in. There's it's actually a lot of room to work in there. You can remove this crossbar, it helps out a lot. Memory's installed. You can see the power's pulled through. Power and the EPS 12 volt here. 12 volt radiator, 120 millimeter radiators mounted down here at the bottom. There's a lot of airflow. If you notice, there's plenty of open space here. Air comes through the front. It'll get pulled in through this fan, pushed down through the radiator, and then this is the casing for this. You can see it actually lines up underneath. There's a vent here, so that would be under there, and then the air will exhaust out the bottom. And you can see the design of the case means that's not right on the ground, so there's actually ability for air to flow out, and it's actually a really cool aspect that's endemic to the design of the case, which is very convenient. And then see, what else was I gonna say? Oh, for the same thing goes actually for the power supply bay. You can see the power supply's fan has a 140 millimeter fan on the other side of it, and that lines up with another vent that would go on